what I would like you to each do is start out with no more than 1 minute, and we'll start down with you, Dan, of what you bring to the table, policy, in terms of expertise and background that would make a difference policy-wise, and specifically what your policy issues are, okay? And what matters, policy-wise. Dan, why don't you start out? I'm just going to go down the table. And my apologies that you may come behind the same person again. I'm not going to mix and match and go all over the place because my notes will go crazy if I do that, okay? So you don't want me to mix up who said what, right? Dan, go ahead.
Okay, hold on a second. Here's passing this down. Well, I've spent the last 30 years of my life working on public policy. The past 9 years, I was the policy director for the Union of Concerned Scientists. So I've been up in Sacramento or worked with various regional agencies, elected officials at different levels of government, being involved in writing legislation, passing legislation. For example, the state law that requires at least 1/3 of our electricity to come from clean renewable sources, I was the lead environmental advocate and helped write parts of that legislation. So I've been involved in complex public policy issues over the past several years, really the past couple decades or more. So I've brought together stakeholders, I've analyzed problems, vetted solutions, I take a very analytical approach to problem solving. I've worked a lot with scientists and engineers, and you have to do that. And I built coalitions and work with coalitions, which have included people I agree with and people I disagree with. I also have 10 years of volunteer mediation experience, so I think the people skills and mediation skills is important to function with your colleagues in the city council as well as with stakeholders around the state.
So what are your issues? What are give me
the things I want to accomplish.
The 3 top things.
Okay. The 3 I would say is
yes, we'll come back. Chances are with each of you that whatever your issues are, we're going to come back. With a lot of them, I suspect we're going to discuss them in greater breadth. So I just want to kind of know what they are.
Right.
Your checklist.
Economic development with a strong emphasis on clean technology jobs, clean technology businesses. I have a lot of experience working with those business leaders. I could bring more clean tech businesses, which are mostly job intensive, to Oakland, as not the only thing, but one of the main things to do for economic development. 2, obviously crime prevention and public safety. We clearly need more police, more crime investigators, but for me, the centerpiece of any effective program is to invest seriously and heavily in effective anti-recidivism programs. Who commits the most crime? People have committed crimes before. We got to invest in anti-recidivism work, working with the county, within Measure Y. I could talk for days just on that issue. Anti-recidivism work is a top priority. And 3, restoring trust in City Hall. If we don't restore trust and confidence, and there are a series of ideas and projects and policies I want to put in place to help do that, then the public's not going to support us on other big things. So I have a whole range of things with improving customer service, beefing up our ethics commission, public ethics commission, have a rainy day fund for our city budget. There are many things we could do, not to mention how the city council members treat each other and cooperate with each other. There are many things we can do to restore people's trust and confidence, and that is really almost a precondition to doing other big things. So those are the 3 top areas for me.
Amy?
All right. I think from a policy perspective, what I bring is I'm someone who has uniquely worked on the community-based level, on the city level, on the county level, the state, and the federal level. And that has given me a very unique perspective to understand what different forms of government do and how we can creatively go beyond just our very restricted city general fund to meet the needs of Oakland. Specifically, some examples. Oakland has a very high rate of poverty, a very high rate of unemployment. We should have a better relationship with our county. Our residents should be receiving more public benefits. They should be outreached to more aggressively. Similarly, our housing authority. Many people don't know the 24th and the 25th of September were 2 days this month when the housing authority opened its Section 8 wait list. Because I have broached this world between county government and state government and a community-based organization, I know that that's a critical resource to our residents, particularly for a low-income city like Oakland. In my work at the John Burton Foundation, I've written state legislation as well as federal legislation and worked with people from the far right to the far left. Many people have not actually been able to form consensus around an issue such as children. Children don't vote, children don't contribute to PACs. But nonetheless, I was able to bring people who are unlikely allies to this issue to actually expand a federal entitlement under George W. Bush. And that's because I take a very pragmatic approach, a respectful approach, and one that is evidence-based.
Okay, so your 3 issues.
The 3 issues I have, first is economic development. We need to reduce our 14.4% rate of unemployment for several reasons. One is to move people out of poverty. Secondly, by bringing more business to Oakland, we are going to expand our business license tax and our sales tax, and that gives us money, real money we need to restore my second priority, which is public safety. I believe we should have 1,000 police officers. I think we can expand our economy to achieve this. We have $1 billion annual economy. There's too much emphasis just on the general fund. If I'm elected, I will pick through the full $1 billion with a fine-tooth comb, release us from obligations where we can, and redirect as much of that money towards discretionary spending on the part of the council. And third, I am the parent of 2 children, 1 school age. We must form a new innovative relationship with the school district. Our city council has passed for too long on public education. I've got a number of ways we can do that. I've raised millions of dollars in the philanthropic sector. I want to go out, raise that money, bring it to Oakland Unified to fully implement restorative justice. That's one example where our paths cross clearly by keeping kids in school and out of the criminal justice system. It helps kids, it saves us money, and that's something I want to do with the school board on day one.
Donnell.
Yeah, my background has basically been in the community, 22 years of activism at the local level, and that always produced appointments to deal with citywide issues. Community policing in the Shattuck Corridor led to the Community Policing Advisory Board, to Task Force 2 that created community policing for Oakland, and then to chairmanship of the Community Policing Advisory Board.
Pardon my not knowing this, but what is your business that you own?
I own a small contracting business, electrical contracting in energy efficiency. Been doing that for about 26 years now.
Okay, I just go ahead. Okay.
The work that I've done in the public safety area also led to serving on the Oakland think tank, where we addressed the issue of truancy. That was put together by Judge David Krashna, and Dick Spies also served on that group. And the truancy issue has become a very important one. The main policy issues that I would be addressing, number one, public safety, because it's at the center of an awful lot of the problems that the city has. It's connected with my second issue, which would be economic and business development. I think that Oakland needs to be much more business friendly to small businesses, which means cleaning up the permit process and eliminating some of the barriers that keep businesses from coming here. And then the key to all of this is really youth success in school. Some kids don't have parents and family that are going to guide them through this. So I advocate a partnership between the city and the school district to have an extensive program of volunteer mentoring and tutoring so that kids stay in school and are successful in school. And I think that is going to address not only the public safety issue, but also the economic development piece of it. Because a kid who drops out of school in junior high is not employable after that.
Donnell.
How you doing? I'd sum it up that my focus would be on intergovernmental affairs. I think that that's where a lot of the devil lies in the details, and I'll go 3 examples of that. Would be my 3 priorities, if you wish. We need to support our schools. We have a program that we're supposed to have, which is a civic center concept where we share resources. We have things that we've started with our libraries, the teen centers, the homework programs. We have things we're supposed to be doing in traffic control. And that's a good example of intergovernmental affairs actually changing the way we live. Another one would be, and this is very important to me, is we need some kind of diversion program when we arrest young people to see whether or not we're actually going to start them out on a life in the criminal justice system. We have no triage, we have no diversion project, and we have no formalized relationship with the county who actually does the prosecuting and the incarcerating. Third example would be how things work with the CDCR. People are released into our community, and we are the local community that's supposed to be receiving these parolees, but we're not really part of the plan for their integration into our community. So that would be the type of thing that I would see as intergovernmental affairs actually affecting the priorities that I have. My personal background, first and foremost, I've been working on this budget and this city for years. I'm a member of the Pueblo board. I've been an advocate. I've been a student of the budget. You know, as an activist, I think that brings a lot to the table. I also have a very mixed white and blue collar background, which I think is a little unusual. I have worked in government, but I've also worked as a small business owner, and before that I was an industrial technician for a long time. So a lot of the issues, be it recycling, gray water, alternative energy, permitting, zoning, I understand the technical side of it because I was one of the people that actually did that work. I was, like I said, I was an industrial technician for 19 years. And that brings a lot. It's a perspective that I would hope to meld with the other perspectives of the members of the board.
Good. Now that I've got my order all reshuffled and we're good,
You're good to go.
we're good to go.
All right. Let me begin by pointing out something that a large group of baboons is often referred to as a congress. That's another definition. So I'm going to start with that.
Okay, I guess there's a significance here.
There is.
Okay.
Policy-wise, I'm a lawyer and a parent, and I have interpreted legislation all my life. Legislation is often written so poorly.
What kind of lawyer are you?
I do family law, I do civil law, and I do small business law. I'm a parent with two kids at Oakland Claremont Middle School, public school, ages 11 and 13. My oldest daughter is actually involved in restorative justice program on that campus, has been. She's there second year now. My three policies are, and I'll keep it short, I want to hire more police officers via $80 parcel tax for 4 years. I want to create more jobs.
$80 parcel tax
Correct.
for 4 years.
Yes.
Okay.
It would be modeled similar to, but not identical to, Measure I. Measure I, it broke down how progressive the tax would be applied to homeowners, renters, businesses, etc. That seemed like a pretty fair proposal. So that's my proposal for hiring more police officers. I'm probably the only politician that you will hear this year who will say, I want to tax you more. But I do, because I believe Oakland's in an emergency. We just saw a few days ago that a child was shot, bullet in his liver, and thank God he's going to survive. But that's not the first child, is it? That's the fourth child this year. And if we keep waiting, how many more children are going to get shot? So for me, it's an emergency issue. Second, create jobs in Oakland. How are you going to do that? You need a specific plan. It's great that we can talk about the MacArthur BART Station, which is a partnership. That was a good project. We can talk about the Oakland Army Base, another good project where we have partnership between unions and private developers. Good. And the city was involved in all those projects. Government money was involved in all those projects. Taxpayers' money. All right. But you need a specific program to promote small businesses, because I believe small businesses is you got to lay a base. So how are you going to do that? You give them a tax break. New Oakland businesses need a tax break. Oakland has a business tax that varies according to what type of business you are. I'm proposing that on the first $100,000 of gross receipts, that there be no Oakland business tax for new businesses coming to Oakland. All right? I'm also proposing that be for 1 year.
Yeah, let's not get too deep in the weeds yet.
Okay, so that's number two. And then the third one, again, it relates back to sustainable development, and we can go into that later.
Sustainable development, what do you
Yes.
mean by that?
Well, again, it's the MacArthur BART Station, it's the Fruitvale Station, it's mixed-use development up and down San Pablo Avenue.
Okay, Richard.
I am the only candidate with experience balancing large government budgets. I've been a budget director for about 15 years now, most recently at our own Alameda County Public Health Department. I was in charge of a $120 million budget with 600 staff, and I was able to work...
You're budget director at Alameda County
Yes, sir.
Health Department.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And working with my colleagues, we were able to create a $6 million surplus 3 years in a row during the height of the recession, which we turned around and used to prevent layoffs and maintain core services. Not only do I know how to save money, but I also know how to raise money. I was a lead on building a coalition between the building industry, school administrators, and community activists to create a $20 billion statewide bond, Proposition 1D, back in 2006, And I'm proud to say we were successful in raising that money, and that money is now flowing to schools across the
So
state.
what are your 3 issues?
So beyond that, though, I do have community activism experience. I'm the Neighborhood Watch block captain, and I led a group of neighbors that adopted our local park to create a crop swap. My 3 issues. First, the loss of life in this city is untenable. And my first issue was reducing this rate of violent crime, the highest rate of violent crime in the state. The way that I plan to do that is through championing the full and comprehensive implementation of ceasefire, which is data-driven, collaborative, and proven to be successful when done correctly. Secondly, my second big issue is a very assertive and inclusive economic development plan that focuses on our underutilized transit hubs and transit corridors, bringing labor and community and developers together around a unified vision for our own economic prosperity, capitalizing on the growing demand for urban, walkable communities around BART stations. My third issue is our youth and having the expectation that they are part of this growing regional knowledge sector economy. We need to be very intentional about creating pathways from OUSD to college to career. Again, there's a growing knowledge sector here. Half of our kids are not prepared, or half of our kids are dropping out and obviously not expected to participate. We need to be very intentional about bringing the players together, including industry, to create those pathways and pipelines.
Okay. Lynn?
Hi, yeah. My education and extensive experience as a CPA and advisor to many very large local businesses, some of whom have sales that approach that of the general fund, has prepared me to deal with the numbers that we have here. I have several years of following Oakland budget, criticizing, commenting, studying on financial operations. In many ways, I really have only one main priority, and it's the intertwined crime and fiscal problem that Oakland faces. Even though I'm a CPA, the reason I got into this was really, when I think about it, it was when Chauncey Bailey was gunned down. I led a pretty private life. I did the usual things with children and stuff in Oakland, helping him. When he was gunned down just like a few blocks from the courthouse, I said, what the heck? You have this guy with a shotgun and a mask walking around for half an hour. There's no cops to stop him. Okay. Then I still didn't that wasn't enough to push me into action. Then there was a little kid who was paralyzed up at 51st and it was right very close to where I live. And shortly thereafter, Parada's car was carjacked by the same thug. Right. Okay. That's when I went nuts, and I looked around to find some of the support who would be tough on crime, and I found Pat McCullough, who ran against Jane Bruner. But what I consistently heard was, we don't have the money. We can't afford more cops. We can't afford effective programs. We don't have the money. Okay, so I'm a CPA. So I did things like ask Bruner, like, I've heard something about unfunded medical benefits for retirees. How much is that? And she'd give these weird answers.
Tell you what, before you go too deep there, okay, because we're going to come to this
all right,
issue.
That's cool. Anyway,
so your issues are crime and fiscal.
And the intertwined fiscal problems and the unfunded liability tsunami that's approaching us. That is my platform. To me, I see them as all intertwined. That we have to find a way to reduce crime without bankrupting the city, and at the same time dealing with the 2.5 billion plus fiscal tsunami that is soon upon us as the baby boomers start retiring. And pretty much as a way to deal with that, the first step I would have is I would declare a fiscal emergency so we could renegotiate all contracts. The second thing I would do is have the city council break its contract with
before you go there. We're gonna get into this.
Okay, that's cool.
Okay,
all right.
I just need to know
big pictures.
I need to know the bullet items. Okay, and then we'll come to this. So. And you are a little prescient here. Okay, if my computer is. Okay, so let's start, and let's go back down to the other end of the table, because Frankly, Len raises an issue that's, for those of you who've read our editorial page and my columns, you probably know, is of pretty high importance to us. Dan, let's start out with you. Give me your understanding of what the unfunded liability is and what it represents. And how much you think it is.
Well,
And by unfunded liability, there are two areas, but what I'm actually talking about, well, you can define it as you want.
Yeah, well, I was about to say is there's the old PFERS pension system, and then there's our current retirement system, and they're really separate pots of money, although they all come from they all have to be paid for by us here. But yeah, those are kind of two separate liabilities, if you will. And I believe the PFERS system, there's some upwards of $2 billion I've heard over the lifetime. I've gotten different, I can't get a straight number from people, is what I'm saying. But I've heard it's obviously quite substantial. And for our existing, the current pension system, where we are part of CalPERS, given what we give in and what the expectations and the requirements are, that's also in the quite significant amount of money. So, is your question like what we'll do about it?
We're not going to get to what we're going to do about it. That's the next.
Oh.
I just want to understand. I want to get a grasp on people's understanding of it.
Oh yeah, we're talking about in the billions here.
Okay.
I mean, there's no question about it.
What does it represent, though?
In terms of a percentage of ours annually of our city budget?
Not so much what it represents. What does an unfunded liability mean?
It means that we have certain contractual obligations to pay current or previous employees, or people who become retired employees, as the case may be, and that we don't currently have a structure or expectation of having enough revenue to pay those over time. And if you're a shortfall, a few $1,000, that's not a big deal. If you're a shortfall hundreds of millions or in the billions, that's a very big deal. Does that answer your question?
It's an answer.
Yeah. And then how it impacts the rest of what you want to do with your city budget. That obviously is a major factor.
Amy?
I'll start with PFERS. So PFERS is the now retired retirement system, and it represents the financial obligations we have to over 1,000 former public safety employees, only one currently working. And these are contractual obligations we've made. To change them would require a change of the city charter. And it's money that's owed, people who worked for our city, people who contributed their life's work, and that we've got to pay. As you well know, we've kicked the can down the road. We've passed a number of bonds to delay payday on that. But that is perhaps our biggest cloud over our head, because that is an old system, and it's a system that we've got to handle. And we only have 4 years to start to answer it. And unfortunately, I don't think our current council is going to take the development of that answer seriously until about 6 months prior. I would take a very different approach. Secondly, however, is the pension obligations we have for our current employees. Fortunately, we're part of CalPERS. We've moved out of a system where we all have our employees in one city system. We can spread our risk, and have gotten good returns in the past. However, with the housing collapse of 2008, due to the speculative investments of Wall Street, CalPERS has stopped performing. We also didn't help ourselves when we took a holiday in the payment of CalPERS over 10 years, and that's something our city officials have to take full responsibility for. And so what that represents is the retirement monies owed to employees. As well, we also have a significant amount of unfunded liability on health-related costs that are not part of the CalPERS obligation. So these are serious issues. We have $1 billion annual budget. We have over $2.5 billion in unfunded liabilities. In terms of leverage, that's not the worst leverage rate in the world. It's not the best. What troubles me more than the amount of unfunded liability is our total lack of a fiscal plan to address it. Starting with something as small as when we asked our employees to go on 20 furlough days. That was done without any understanding or expectation about what level of recovery our economy would have to have before we address those. So everything is about power, everything is opportunistic. There's no clear road plan. And so I do think that with the right road plan and with council members who can collaborate, we can put ourselves in a fiscal order without totally slashing and burning our benefits and wages to employees. But we're not going to do it if we don't put that fiscal plan in place, and that's a top priority for me.
Donnell.
Yeah. The PFERS retirement plan has a deficit of about $427 million. And the city is addressing that through a bond that the City Council recently passed. That bond is going to be a bridge bond to 2016 and 2017, when current bonds that are paid for by parcel tax payments will be paid off. And the premise was that the money going into those bonds would then be diverted into the PFERS plan. The PFERS has to be paid off by 2026. We would have extended that by 3 or 4 years had one of those measures gone through last fall.
You would have extended indefinitely.
Pardon me?
You would have extended indefinitely had it gone through. There was nothing in there that said 2 or 3 years. Go ahead. Yeah.
Anyway,
if you read my column on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
So
just want to correct your record there. Okay.
So the diversion of these current parcel taxes into the PFERS plan is supposed to pay it off by 2026. I haven't run the numbers on it to see if that's accurate. My question, though, is whether or not the city council, city government, is going to be responsible when those parcel taxes, those current bonds are paid off. If they don't divert the funds that we're paying now into the PFERS, we're in the same position we've been. In 1996, I believe, we passed
You want to talk about some of the other unfunded liabilities too?
Well, the unfunded liabilities, part of it's from the CalPERS plan. CalPERS can come back to the various cities and agencies that are using that system if they fall short and actually assess them. That's a problem. And then we're not paying as we go for the health benefit obligations that we have. And it's just not responsible to
You're not paying as you go for the health benefit plans.
Well, we're not paying enough so that we have the funds needed for those obligations.
Okay.
And paying as you go really means that you're going to completely cover those obligations as opposed to partially covering them.
Okay, Donnell.
Okay. You know, a lot
Well,
of
here before Donnell, before I let you go, what does that unfunded liability represent to you?
Well, it represents an economic time bomb. At some point, it's going to be due. We have a legal obligation to pay these things. We cannot, at some point in the future, say, oh, by the way, we're not going to do it. We've changed our mind.
Okay.
The only exception might be bankruptcy, and even that's a legal question.
Don?
Yes?
Donnell, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I agree with a lot of what was said here. Starting with the numbers we don't really know. We've been, as activists, we've been asking for precise numbers, including from the incumbent, and not quite getting them. No, we don't have a plan. And I don't think it comes due at a point. I think the way it works is it comes due on a schedule. It's a schedule that we don't have planned. Is this, and you know, we're talking about the retirement, we're talking about the retirement health benefits, we're talking, you know, and it's quite a complicated salad of it's like 320 lines. And I was
320
lines of budget in the budget. I tried to read it and I just frankly couldn't. It's a question really of what is the city's cash flow. Yes, we will hold a liability. We're going to need to pay so much of it as people retire, as it's needed. And we need to be understanding how much of that obligation is growing, how much of it are we paying down as we go. And I think a lot of this really hits with the fixed benefit concept. My union doesn't go for a fixed benefit concept.
fixed benefit concept. You're talking about defined contribution.
Exactly.
Are
Well-
you advocating or against it? I mean, what are you saying?
I'm
I'm
from
not
a,
quite sure.
I'm from a union that does defined contributions, the machinists union, and we had a big argument with the auto workers, and the auto workers have now seen what bankruptcy and whatnot has done to their retirements and stuff like that. I want to see the city live up to its obligations and not go here, but we have to stop creating in undefined obligations and very strange ways of calculating what we're going to owe in retirement, who we're going to owe the medical benefits to, and for how long. And at the same time, we don't have a defined way in which we're going to pay into a program to do that. Every business carries a debt. Every government carries a debt. The question is, how do we schedule it? And I feel it's totally unscheduled.
Correct.
Yes, I believe your original question was, what are the unfunded liabilities and how much?
How much and what do they mean?
Okay, so
What does that mean?
the unfunded liabilities, are like everyone has mentioned, there's 3 of them. There's PERS,
There's
or
what?
CalPERS,
I'm sorry.
CalPERS.
Mm-hmm.
There's the old retirement system for the police and fire.
PFERS, yes.
PFERS, correct. And then, of course, there's all the medical health care benefits that's totally unfunded at this point. Together, so let's start with CalPERS. CalPERS recently has been changed by state law. Governor Brown signed in some changes that will help. CalPERS, as you know, wasn't doing too well, but if you look at the long term, over 30 years, maybe CalPERS isn't doing so bad. It's true what my colleagues have said, that we bought some time with this $420 million bonds.
You're on PFERS now, right?
Yes, sorry.
Stick with CalPERS for 1 second.
Sure.
Over 30 years, maybe CalPERS isn't doing so bad. What does that mean?
It means that the rate of return over a 30-year period is not 1%. It's a better rate of return. It's probably closer to 7.5. It's the same for the California Teachers Retirement Fund. If you look at it over a long period of time,
Well, the Teachers Retirement Fund you don't want to go to because that's a whole
Yeah.
different problem.
I understand.
Okay.
But I'm just saying that we need to look at the problem, sort of pension funds.
And what's
over
the
a long
relevance
period.
of the rate of return over 30 years is not 1%? What is it? So what?
Well, what we're doing is we're saying, oh my God, we got a huge problem here because we're only getting a return of 1%. True, but you also need to look at the long picture too.
What is the unfunded liability and what would it take to get out of it then?
On CalPERS?
Yeah.
I don't know the exact amount. I know
What would
that-
it take to get out of it?
Well, what it would take is what we've been doing, which is getting give-backs from the police union and the fire union and from the public employees. So you're asking me
I
specifically.
mean, I guess
how to
what I'm
solve
asking
it.
is, are you saying that future investment returns are going to get you out of this?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Not at all. But I also want to caution people that it's just because it's been low for the last few years, that doesn't mean it's over and we're sunk. Because, like when you buy a house, it's a 30-year mortgage, right? Okay, so we got to look at long term a little bit too. Regarding the medical unfunded liability, no one seems to be addressing that. I believe it's about $1.5 billion. And I think Len probably knows.
I'm sorry,
exact-
which one?
Unfunded medical.
The OPEB liability. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe it's at least $1.5 billion. But Len down here to
Well-
my left
Don't quote me.
probably knows better than me because he's a CPA and has been looking at this. So, what are the choices? Well, the choices, you aren't getting at the choices. You asked the amounts and you asked.
Yeah,
the-
we're going to talk about the choices in a second.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Richard, you're the budget guy.
I guess I am. So
Unfunded
what,
liability. What's an unfunded liability mean to you?
the number that I've heard for PFERS is
So what-
$2.5 billion.
Okay.
The number that what I've heard of
Billion?
billion. Mhm. What I heard for PERS, I haven't heard the number for PERS. What I hear CalPERS saying is that it's they're 75% funded, and of course there was some recent legislation passed where new employees are contributing more.
Okay. CalPERS is 75% funded. Is that a market value of assets or an actuarial value of assets?
I don't know.
Do you know the difference?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Regardless, the bottom line is
Does it
we've got,
matter?
Of course, it matters.
Okay.
The bottom line, though, is that we've got billions and billions of dollars of unfunded commitments, basically expenses that we've got to pay, and we don't know where the revenue is going to come from. The way that I was faced with this very same situation at the Public Health Department during the recession. The way that you prepare for an unfunded commitment, you do two things. You reduce your expenditures and you maximize your revenues. Now, we've seen, as I've said, that
We'll get to the solutions in a second.
that's where I'm going.
Don't go to the solutions yet. I want to understand who understands the problem, and then we'll get to the solutions, okay? So I just want to see what you understand the problem to be and what you understand
We have
terms
commitments
of-
that we do not have revenue for.
Okay. And commitments, when you say commitments, is the unfunded liability a commitment? Is the unfunded liability represent the future commitments, or is that the shortfall today?
Because of the bond that the city council recently passed, it's for the future when it comes to PFERS. With CalPERS, I'm not sure that it's today. I think it's down the line.
Yes, Len, I did wait for you at the end. to
No,
let
I have
me-
nothing to add. No, I'm kidding.
Well, actually,
you know what's interesting?
I'm not done. I thought,
You
we're
wanna
not getting to
get into them with
solutions?
it? Yeah,
We're not
No,
going.
no,
We're
I
going
do
to come
solutions.
back to
Okay.
solutions.
Yeah.
We're going through this
Yeah.
trying to define the
Okay.
problem
Yeah.
first.
The number I see for Mayor Kwan is 2.5 billion. She specifically says, or Deanna Santana specifically says, it does not include the CalPERS catch-up, okay? Which
The
is
catch-up.
Well, I think she uses the word adjustment or something to recover. They've deferred various. They've deferred recognizing the the losses that they've experienced, and
So she's doing on an actuarial value.
Yes, but she's also. I think you're correct, but essentially, the main omission that everyone here is mentioning is that 2.5 includes deferred infrastructure, which is huge, and the estimates I see for that are anywhere from 500 million to
The
2 billion.
2.5 includes the deferred?
Yes, it does. That's how they get to that's how Mayor Kwan gets to the 2.5. But she excludes the CalPERS true up that's needed. And the problem with I could say PFERS I think is somewhere in the 400 million area. Medical retirement, I thought it was in the 700 million area. They're saying 500 million. The problem with all of these actuarially determined
You thought it was
items-
what? I'm sorry.
I thought it was in the medical retirement benefits, post-retirement medical.
Was how much?
I thought it was in the 500
You're
million, but I'm sorry, I thought it was in the 700. But
You thought, no, it's 500.
yeah, it's about last year was 5. The problem with all these, they're actuarially based, and they're using these nutso rate of return assumptions. CalPERS particularly, but PFERS, they're using like 7 point something, and as a rate of return. As soon as you put in a realistic risk-adjusted rate, like you'd have to if it was a private company, you'd be these obligations would skyrocket.
Okay.
So
what does it mean? What does this mean to you? What does this unfunded
what does it
liability-
mean to me?
What does it represent?
In the case of the pensions, it's the present value of the actuarially determined obligation we have under different contracts for everything except for infrastructure. That is not a contractual obligation. That's a moral obligation to keep the city from falling apart. So these are, hey, if it was a private business, they'd have to use a realistic rate of return, which would probably be 3% instead of 7%, and they would have been accruing the expense on their financials as they went along. They would have showed a huge deficit. Instead, they're saying we have a balanced budget, which is absolute gobbledygook because politicians set the rules for government accounting, and it's absolutely irresponsible.
Okay.
Can I just add one more thing to your question?
Yeah, sure.
It's, I think in a kind of a general sense, what it represents is that a lack of genuine long-term planning by the current city council or the past city councils for the past 20 years. So that's kind of more of a generic thing.
Well, I think it's true, it does.
Yeah.
Here's just so we can now define the problem. The answer to the question is the unfunded liability represents the present value, you were right in the present value notion, of the future obligations that have been accrued already. The unfunded future obligations that have been accrued. It's for past labor costs. It's not for future labor costs. It's for past labor costs. It's just like the salary, as if you had not paid salary in the past and took out a loan for it. You're taking out a loan, essentially, for the benefits you should have already pre-funded. So that's what the unfunded liability is. It's not for the future. It's for already accrued benefits. The amounts are, from the best I can determine, CalPERS is somewhere in the vicinity of 1.2 billion in police and miscellaneous. OPEB is 520. PFERS is 494. That gets you to 2.2 billion. And then you can add on
The truck.
the
Infrastructure.
the capital infrastructure.
What does that number for CalPERS? Is that based on?
That's the
True
number.
up?
That's the numbers. That's the numbers out of their actuarial. Out of
Based
the
on a certain
CalPERS.
percentage projection.
Yeah, and it's
And
based and to be clear, that understates the magnitude of the liability because the point is it is not recognized. It's smoothed in losses that have not been recognized yet, and it's using ridiculous, you were correct, rates of return assumptions. So it's bad. That number's bad on both fronts. Okay. So basically, you have at a minimum a $2.2 billion problem for your retiree benefits alone, not including your infrastructure, which is another roughly, I gather, about $2 billion problem. And so let's go to solutions. Then let's go reverse order. Let's hear from you first. What are your solutions?
I would first require city council to require staff to provide three versions of a midterm and long-term projection that actually accrues these type of expenses. And I would have them make it transparent so we know what their assumptions are. Actually post the darn thing online so that a lot of the smart people in Oakland can actually look at the assumptions and know what the heck the assumptions are. They should do that.
Did you just read my column?
What's that?
You should just read my column. It's all in
No,
there.
seriously.
I
It's
wrote
like
the
trying
book.
to even find out from staff like what rate of return.
Go ahead.
It
I'm
is
sorry.
impossible.
I'm being
You're being
snide.
You're being
That's it.
you're snarky. I think
Yeah, I'm
is
being
the word,
snarky,
right?
right.
Yes.
I'm being snarky, that's right.
Thank you. All right. Yeah. So that's the first thing they should be doing,
Mm-hmm.
but instead they rushed into borrowing more money. I mean, we have someone here whose expertise was borrowing money. He will fit right in with this city council.
I'm sorry. You have
I mean, Richard's one of Richard's claim to fame is borrowing billions of dollars for the state. My God, that's exactly what they love in my city
For
council.
infrastructure. That's like buying a house with a mortgage.
Hey, look, 250. They would have said they say the same thing.
Have you ever? Do you know
Well,
people
hold
who
on,
bought
hold
these
on, hold on.
Okay, anyway,
Time out,
anyway,
time out,
anyway,
time out.
So
I wanna hear your
right,
solution.
I was the
I
only
should've cut
person
you off.
talking against the $250 million pension obligation. This is the third time these idiots. Oh, sorry about that. Because actually I worked with my fellow citizens who are on the
Okay,
council.
but your solutions.
My solution is, hey, you do the transparent long-term and midterm projections with optimistic, realistic, and pessimistic projections. So instead of these loosey-goosey things, we're going to pay for it when this bond matures and that one, which to me is not realistic because we have all these other obligations coming true. I'd say let's see it in writing and let's account for all these costs and the cash flows. The second thing I would do is I would declare a fiscal emergency so all contracts can be renegotiated. And the third thing I would do is I would have the council revoke their craven consent to police and fire contract last year, the clause that said they shall not work to repeal binding arbitration. Binding arbitration to me is a disaster. We have to repeal it so that we can cut police and fire compensation, and bad cops can also get fired. But the compensation stuff, it's impossible to dramatically reduce it, and there's no way we can afford $200,000 a year. A 9% contribution to a pension is nothing when they get a 4.5% raise, deferred raises. That's nonsense.
Richard.
So meeting an unfunded liability is very similar to preparing for a budget shortfall. You minimize expenditures and you maximize revenues, and that's what I did at the Public Health Department. We're going to have to do that.
You minimize expenditures, what?
Minimize expenditures.
Yeah, and what?
Maximize revenues.
Okay, well that sounds all good, but that doesn't give me a little bit more, because the scale of the problem kind of dwarfs anything you might do on the margins.
The scale is large, but precisely for that reason, I don't think we can cut our way out of this problem. I think we're going to also have to grow our way out of this problem. So we have to continue the work that's been done around streamlining operations that Deanna Santana has been doing, give backs from the unions around pensions, as well as furloughs. But we also have to have a very assertive growth strategy. There is something that's working in Oakland right now. We have $11 million in new revenue this year because of new business licenses, because of transit occupancy taxes, and because of new sales taxes. So I don't want us to approach this problem with more doom and gloom. Oakland is on the verge, I think, of something great. We are situated in the center of a booming knowledge sector economy, regional economy. There's a growing demand for transit-oriented housing, and we are situated around 3 underutilized BART stations and transit corridors.
Richard, I'm gonna cut you off. Okay, I hear what you're saying, that there are possibly good things, but this is a problem whose scale in dollars dwarfs everything you're talking about. So economic development is important and all that, but my question has to do with, you've got a $2.2 billion conservatively unfunded liability. Conservatively. That probably grossly understates the magnitude of the problem. Okay? So my question is...
If you let me answer, I can give you an answer.
Well,
so we're patching
I want
this
you to go right at the
okay,
problem.
let's talk about the $2.2 billion. We're patching that number together with assumptions and duct tape and bubble gum. What we need to do is really drill down.
Do you doubt that number?
I don't doubt it. But what I want us to do is to be certain about it. Once we are certain about that number, then we know how much we need to set aside to meet that liability. And when I say set aside, I mean through streamlined operations, savings achieved through streamlined operations, as well as growth and revenue achieved through having a solid economic development plan for this city, which can expand tax revenue. If we know how much we have to set aside, then we can start making some data-driven decisions and have a plan to meet that liability. I do not believe we're going to be able to cut our way out of this. I do believe growth has to be a very important part of this, and we have to know what number we're working toward in order to set that growth aside and set those savings aside to meet that liability. This is what I did year after year for the Public Health Department.
Craig. Just FYI, the number, the $2.2 billion, really hasn't changed for a couple of years.
I'm not doubting that it's more than. I'm not doubting that it's.
It's not a number in great movement.
I mean, the exchange that we're having right here is it 2.2? Is it 2.4? It's 2. Well, I know it's at least $2 billion.
Well, they were audited numbers. Right?
No, I'm not arguing with the numbers.
Okay, so the number I came up with was 1.1 billion.9, I guess, or something. So I was off. My apologies. When we're talking about large,
go ahead, yeah.
When we're talking about large money like that, it matters, of course. But okay, we need solutions. What are the solutions? Well, the truth is, I'm a lawyer, and as a lawyer, I know that every contract is negotiable. And so at this point, we got 2 options, basically: raise taxes or negotiate the contracts with the Public Employees Union. And the way you do that is you start now. You don't wait 4 years from now when the bond comes due. I don't have any ties to any of the public employee unions. I deliberately did not do that because I wanted to stay neutral on this issue. I don't want to be voting on their livelihood and accepting money from them. So I have accepted no money from any of the public employee unions. But the truth is, if we don't negotiate, with the public employee unions in good faith. And if the public doesn't give some and the union gives some like they did in years past, then we're facing bankruptcy. And I don't want to go there. So it's sort of the threat of bankruptcy that will bring people to the table and to get serious. It also means you start doing it now. So that's my solution.
Don M.
You know, a seat on council doesn't come with a magic wand. And
You guys, I thought you guys were coming in. I thought you guys
Yeah.
all had the man.
No, and I don't-
I
You're
got
the
an extra
first
wand in here if you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah, you're the first politician to say that. Go ahead.
I think that actually we have to negotiate a settlement out. I think what Amy was saying is, you know, we don't have a plan. So step one for a new council member is to start bringing this up. We are not even starting the negotiations. I take some principles into it. My first one is let's stop the leaking boat. Before we start bailing it out, let's stop the leak. And I really want us off of a system that continues to accrue larger and larger liabilities without any targeted income stream. Then we can start talking about what it is we'll actually pay, when, and start to set together an income stream. And the real answer is going to be really dirty negotiated politics between the council and the mayor, various economic interests in the city, including especially our unions. And I can see us coming to it, but I can't see us coming to it if we don't, as the council, start the process and say, resolving this is our priority. Let's open the negotiations. Let's see what we can have for another way of paying pensions from here on out. Let's see what we can do for our medical insurance liabilities from here on out, and build some kind of system like most unionized employees in America have, where the problem stops on payday. Most unionized employees get whatever compensation they're going to get on payday. Your company could go out of business tomorrow, but your plan has been paid into, and that's what I'd like to go to.
Don. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with what's been said about dealing with the truth and starting there. But I would also want to, and this is something I would do for things not involving the unfunded pension liabilities, and that is every budget cycle, which is a 2-year cycle in Oakland now, would start with the old budget, at least in our minds and in the process, sunsetting. And the idea behind this is that you build from zero. And you say, okay, what are the most important things that have to be done? What has to get done?
Yeah,
And
well, I mean, but I totally understand that budgeting concept. It's certainly not new. But again, this is a bigger problem, as I was saying over here. It's a bigger problem, so I guess I'm looking for more substance than process here. You know?
Well, let me go a little further with that. If we see that this unfunded liability is something that absolutely has to be tackled now, we create a budget to start paying that off. And it's going to mean cuts somewhere else. And I think I do the same with the police department. What do you need to police the city? We need, say, a minimum of 800 cops. If there's agreement on that, okay, that's the budget for the police department. And the remainder is going to be fought over by everything else. And I think that these unfunded obligations should be viewed in the same way. I mean, it's not something we can dodge. We need to set it on a schedule, and we need to start paying. Just the way individuals do. Cities cannot print money, so they can't play the game the federal government does.
Amy.
Well, I want to start answering the question by what I think will not work. And I don't think decimating our relationship with city employees and organized labor is going to help. The League of Cities did a report recently and said, what are the predictors of bankruptcy for a city? Is it an older city? Is it a charter city? Yes, we are. Does it have aging infrastructure? Yes, we do. And do we have an adversarial relationship with the organized labor? At this point, no, we don't. Bankruptcy will not help us. As we know from Vallejo, it just guts the city, takes the services down to nothing, causes mass exodus, and leaves those that are too poor to move with a very low quality of life. It doesn't release us from any obligations. We'll see if Stockton is able, through litigation, to arrive at a different conclusion, but the evidence we have right here and right now suggests that it will not. Therefore, it's my priority.
Stockton's interesting, but by the way, there are hints from the judge that you may see some interesting
Right.
movements on the vested rights issues. Go
Right.
ahead.
And if that's the-
Excuse me, point of information, Amy, didn't they right off the bat knock out the post-retirement medical benefits? That was wiped out? Just a point of information, yes or no?
I
Is that
don't think so.
Are you talking Vallejo or Stockton?
No, Stockton.
Stockton hasn't worked out anything.
No.
And what about Vallejo?
Vallejo, I don't know on OPEB, but on pensions, PERS,
Pension, right.
they never touched it.
Post-retirement,
Yeah.
I believe, is knocked out.
Yeah.
So to my point, whether we like it or not, we can point fingers and call people names. A very adversarial, combative, and aggressive approach to organized labor in this city is not going to make matters better. And it's not because I have the endorsement of the firefighters and the police, which I do, and I'm proud to have.
Well,
I also
police
have
also-
contributions from over 300 District 1 residents, and yet I'm not shying away from representing their interests.
Did police endorse you?
They did.
No.
So that's kind of where I'm coming from, and this is part of the way I have been successful in my professional life is not tearing people down. I'm a trusted person, and I think I will have the capacity as someone from the left, someone from the homeless and affordable youth community, to build a bridge with these interests, to find ways to work together.
Okay, so what is the roadmap?
What's the roadmap? Well, I think the first thing is what we all agree about is certainly a robust financial plan that absolutely doesn't just have the best rate of return, but has a realistic rate of return, and that makes that information clear to the residents of Oakland in a way that it's not even clear currently to sitting city council members. So I think that's one thing that's very important. Also, we are going to have to stop doing certain things in order to find the monies to even begin to start to pay the pension obligation bonds. And this is where I think my experience is unique.
Okay, what are we going to have to stop doing?
We do many things that other parts of government should do. As a 20-year affordable housing advocate, I don't think the city should build any more affordable housing. I think we need to turn to our housing authority and turn to other sources of funding for that. Social services, just the same. I have run a social service organization, and I've worked closely with social service organizations. That's the work of the county. So we have a lot of demands at the front hall of City Hall, and instead of having a council member that knows how to find the unit of government whose jurisdiction that is, we roll over and say, okay, we'll try and fit it in. I, on the other hand, will go to the county, work with our supervisor and the rest of the supervisors to try and find a way to get those needs met. Currently, Oakland is very underserved. So I think there are a number of specific things we're doing that we shouldn't be doing. Other things that we're doing that we shouldn't be doing is wasting hundreds of hours of time doing silly things like a urban husbandry ordinance that discusses whether we will or whether we will not have backyard animal slaughter. In a city like Oakland, with the real pressing issues we face, that is not a reasonable use of limited resources. As a council member, I will be clear and unequivocal that with the resources we have to focus them. Those staff hours cost money. Secondly, dog parks.
We're not going to get down to
Right.
animal husbandry and dog parks on this question, okay?
But I think it is
I mean,
indicative, if I can say, it is indicative
It
of the
may
fact
be, but
that
I'm asking
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying of completely doing away with certain agencies.
Yeah.
That might be starting to get to the scale of the problem here. But let's not get down the weeds
Right.
on this problem, okay?
Mhm.
I mean, that's not going to help the discussion.
Well, I
okay?
think that we do have to have a consensus in the city about what a city truly does. Right now, we look across the bay and we like all the bells and whistles that San Francisco has. First of all, San Francisco is a city and a county. Second of all, it's an extremely affluent city and a county. So it does matter that the residents understand the core functions of a city and that we have a council member that's able to persuasively make the case that we can't do everything.
Dan?
So yeah.
Yeah, let me rattle off 6 things, no one of which is going to be a magic answer or, oh, here's the big answer. Yeah, magic wand.
You had the wand.
Yes, I was going to give it to somebody else. So one, these are no particular order. One, increased economic activity, economic development. Yes, we all want that. That will be part of the solution if we're successful in bringing more in. no one here or anywhere should suggest that's going to be an overwhelming part of the solution, or it's going to be a panacea. It's not, but we still need to work hard on creating more economic development, economic activity, and I have some specific ideas to do that, which we can talk about later. So that's one area that's part of the solution. Two, we need a rainy day fund in our budget. I've been talking about this till I'm blue in the face. They have one in San Francisco. It worked there. They passed it 9 years ago. They passed it in a very broad-based fashion. We don't have it here. We should take their model, tweak it a little bit, and pass one here. Again, that's not going to solve all the problems in the past, but it will help in the future and provide a little extra money. Third, Jerry Brown has his law. Some of those that just passed. Some of those provisions, as you know, impact local government.
You're talking about pension?
The pension formula, yeah. Some of those impact the local governments. I want to reread that and decide. Okay, let's look to see which ones impact us, which decisions we now
The
have to
answer
make.
is not much. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Fourth.
Okay. Four is we're going to have to continue to ask our public service employees to be part of the solution. Not in maybe a dramatic way that some people are suggesting, but they are going to have to be part of the solution, and I'm going to be able to negotiate with them, sit down with them, and work with them cooperatively to do that. Five, we have to customer service and efficiencies. Part of my things I'm talking about a lot is improving customer service, which can help create some efficiencies in certain departments, which could save money. Again, it's not going to be a lot, but it's going to help, and we should try to do that because we have a responsibility to do that.
Six.
And six, we're going to have to assess ourselves additional funds to fund vital services like police or public safety, and that could free up some of the additional money that we have some discretion over, which is not a lot.
Taxes.
Assessments are taxes, yes. Yes.
I just want to make sure we were using the same words.
Yes, I'm sorry. Parcel assessments. Yeah. So these are 6 things. There could be 5 other things we could add to that list. Each one helps. No one or two by themselves is big enough. So it's have to be a comprehensive plan.
Can I add the one thing that I didn't get a chance to get to? And I know it's a process, but it's very important for me. We're not going to get to any of these things if our council doesn't work harder.
Yeah.
Our council used to meet every week. They voted to now meet every other week. When they have silly things happen, like happened last Tuesday, they lost a valuable opportunity to meet. So I would introduce a minimum meeting ordinance or just a plan to continue to meet weekly. Meetings do matter when it's a legislative body.
I'm going to ask you guys a quick question. I'm going to define it real quickly, and then I really just kind of want a yes/no question, no answer. How many people in here understand the difference between a normal cost and an unfunded liability?
A normal
one. A normal cost and an unfunded liability in a pension payment. Anyone?
Nope, I don't.
No, I didn't get
Normal
that.
cost and unfunded liability.
An unfunded liability portion of your pension payment.
Well,
Okay.
normal
I
cost,
saw it,
normal
but I
cost
didn't understand it when I read the report.
is the normal cost going forward, and the unfunded liability is your past obligations.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Okay.
What do I win?
When you make your pension payments, you pay 2 parts.
Right.
You pay the cost for the next year's accrued benefits, the present value, so that if you invest that money, there's enough for the future for those accrued benefits. And then you make a portion of the payment for the shortfall from the past, the unfunded liability that we discussed. And remember, it's for past service.
Right.
It's a debt.
Which is the normal one?
The normal cost is the going forward.
You have more control over the going forward.
You do have more control over
harder.
it. That's true.
Yeah.
Okay. Jerry Brown's pension reform plan, Jerry Brown, the legislature, but this was part of Jerry Brown's plan, said split the normal cost portion of it 50-50 between employers and employees. Okay? It was a centerpiece of his plan.
Okay.
It was adopted only for state employees. For local employees, the local bodies were given the authority in 2018 to impose that if they wished and they had not already collectively bargained. But they were only given the authority to impose it up to 12% of payroll. Everyone following me so far?
Yeah, the 5 years.
Okay.
12% of payroll could be close to the 50-50.
It could be,
That's
but
not
in
for
your
police
case,
and
it's
fire.
not.
Yeah, I know. It's
Okay?
What is it, 33% or something?
I'd have to pull your
I think it's
actual.
35 for police.
Yeah, but your 35 includes some unfunded liability. Well, I'm sorry, no, because
No,
because you have pension obligation. it's suffice to say you're going to over, if you were to do that, the 12% would be your cap, not the 50-50. My question to each of you is, starting with you, Dan, is it reasonable to ask, and that we're talking safety now, is it reasonable?
Police and fire.
Police and fire. And by the way, fire's already there.
13%.
Yeah.
They're already there.
Fire's already there.
Yeah.
So is it reasonable to ask police to pay 12%, and would you favor imposing it in 2018 if it wasn't already negotiated?
It is reasonable to ask that. I'd prefer to do it through negotiations, but if the financial situation calls for this at that point, which is a number of years down the road, I'm not afraid to make that call. Again, I think it's always good to try negotiations first, and I'm a big believer in negotiations, and I'm a tough negotiator. But ultimately, you got to pay the bills.
Amy?
I think that working towards that split is fair, but no, I would not impose it. I think I could be successful at the bargaining table with our police.
Darnell?
Yeah. As I understand it, the police are now contributing 9%.
That's correct.
So this would be an addition of 3%.
3% payroll.
Yeah. I could see doing that if the conditions required.
Darnell?
I would do both, and I'm still not sure it's up to the measure of the problem. I think
You would do both?
I would say yes, it's fair that they pay that much, and yes, if we couldn't get somewhere with 2018, yes, I dropped the hammer on that. But I just think that both are not up to the measure of the problem. I think we need to do something better than that in both cases.
Craig?
5 years from now, 12% is fair. I would require it.
I'm sorry.
I would require it. And I mean, the police and the fire should be paying the same amount. There's no reason they should be different. Between now and then, there is that rule about trying to collectively bargain and get there. That's difficult to get there. It will be a struggle, but certainly at the end of 5 years, yes.
Richard?
Yeah, if we're faced with this same level of financial uncertainty and the possibility of bankruptcy, I would certainly be open.
I didn't ask about bankruptcy. Just to define the problem.
I would be open to a 12% contribution from the police.
Okay.
And I would not impose it. I would negotiate. I would hope that we could negotiate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lynn?
Yes, but it's nowhere near enough. I would negotiate with a threat with a threat of bankruptcy to do closer to half of what the actual is, which is probably 15%. And for sure, immediately implement two-tier, so that new hires have to in police and all departments have to put in 50%.
And this is assuming we're in our second term.
Let's assume.
No, I never get reelected. I understand that.
I totally understand that. But
This is fantasy. No one's been elected to public office here without union support. Never. In 30 years.
Frankly, I mean, hold on just 1 second. My notes are about to go crazy. Okay. No, frankly, I totally understand that this is in the future, but this is a indicator of where you guys are coming from. I think that's your different approaches. That's all. Okay, we have taken up a lot of your time. I want we have, as you've seen, we've stayed almost entirely on fiscal issues, and the reason is, frankly, that we do believe that the safety issue, which is the other big issue for us, is totally tied to the fiscal issue. And so I want to give you guys each like 30 seconds if you want to add anything. I'm sorry that it's, this has taken, an hour and 15, on just essentially one topic, but it's the most important topic. We are very much concerned about the fiscal solvency of the city. And it is our paramount issue. So let's start with you, Len, since you went last, starting, and we'll work our way back. And we'll give Dan, the poor guy who had to come out of the gate first, the last word. How's that? But 30 seconds. Just, am I missing?
Can you raise your hand in 15 seconds?
Yeah.
Never mind. That's okay. It's really hard explaining to residents of Oakland why the money makes such a difference. They're really cynical about everything about Oakland, and politicians. And it comes to election time, they suspend all disbelief. And the candidates who say you can eat as much chocolate cake as you want and not get fat always win. And here we're having people like Amy who says we can grow our way out.
Just stay with you.
Here, look. Basically, the way I look at it is the total general fund's $400 million. You have to use numbers. You have to talk to voters and give them numbers, even if they don't ask for it. So police and fire are 3/4 of that. There is no way you can pay billions of dollars of unfunded liabilities, let alone hire 200 more cops that are going to cost $40 million a year without slashing what you pay police and fire. It is impossible. You can eliminate everything else, including in bond repayments, and you wouldn't have you'd have $100 million. You couldn't eliminate bond repayments. You couldn't do it. You have to slash costs, which is personnel for police and fire.
Richard.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I feel so privileged
for
to be
coming.
part of talking about the future of Oakland and solutions for Oakland. The scale of the problem, you're right, is gigantic. And I want us to keep in mind that we've got a $1 billion budget with the city, $6 billion budget with the county. So if we can leverage those resources by cooperating with the county more, we will move a big step forward. Also, we are leaving hundreds of millions of dollars in federal transportation dollars on the table every year. Those dollars should be coming to Oakland for sustainable development, transit-oriented development, which I believe will expand our tax base, grow our budget, and help us have a balanced approach of working our way out of our shortfalls. An approach that involves not only streamlining operations, but growing revenue at the same time.
Correct.
Unfunded liabilities can only be dealt with by cutting salaries for police and fire and raising taxes. I don't think there's any other way to really economically outgrow it in the next 10 years. I think we're going to have stagnant growth here in Oakland. So it means negotiating, and it means that, as I pointed out before, I have not accepted money from any of the public employee unions because I think it is a conflict of interest to do that and then to vote on their budgets. I have stayed neutral because I believe that that's where you need to be, to sit down at the table and be fair. So it's going to mean that we sit down and we talk these issues out like we're doing now, but you have to start. And so it means raising taxes, it means cutting salaries, flat out. I don't see any other way around it right now.
Donna.
Was it you that came to the Chamber of Commerce about 2 years ago to talk about this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember that. I remember being staggered by the numbers. The numbers of
Me.
the numbers and the liabilities, and also the numbers
They asked me
around
to come
the
talk, and I'll come talk to anyone.
you did the Inside Oakland Friday. I staggered by those numbers. Also staggered by the numbers of the debt and the redevelopment agency, which has suddenly disappeared. And I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned about the fiscal viability of the city. I think we should avoid bankruptcy. I really do. And I think we're already suffering the consequences of this precariousness. You know, the last budget was a bit of a fiasco. We threatened to close almost our entire library system. The budget before that, we laid off 80 of our new police officers, creating a cost that's going to run for years into the future. They say maybe we get back there in 5 years. And we are already suffering from a government that's not stable, and we haven't, besides these unfunded liabilities, the whole fallout of what it means not to have a redevelopment agency anymore. Money has now kind of played a game of serial teeter-totters, going back to the county, going back here and there. And I'm very much on the same page with Amy. It's like, okay, who's going to pay for what? You know, I think we need to get out of the business the county's in, and I think we need to be demanding the county give us our due when they should be providing services. And that's a large amount of money. That's not trivial.
Donnell.
Would you repeat the question, please?
Yeah,
You
no, I
started
just
talking about one
wanted you,
thing.
this is just an opportunity for you guys to just give me just a final, your final
turn.
thought. They're really about, it's just your wrap up of, you know, if you think there's, you know, your general thinking and, you know,
On this subject of the unfunded.
on this subject, or if there's something you feel like, you know, that we really should have talked about, you know, that you want to quickly touch, but, you know, just take 30 seconds, minute at the most, okay?
Okay.
'Cause these guys are probably taking a minute, you know, so I'm going to let you.
Yeah.
Well, okay, maybe.
I said under.
I didn't sit there with the stopwatch, forgive me. Oh, you did, okay.
Yeah, on the issue of public safety, we have a really great opportunity. The combination of ceasefire, which is not an expensive program, but has been proven to be very effective, and which would deal with that really awful issue of bullets flying around, children getting killed or shot. And I think we also have an inexpensive way of dealing with preventing crime in the future by
That was your background music,
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
that was your special effects.
I signaled it. By making sure that kids are in school. That means dealing with truancy effectively and also making sure they're successful. If kids stay in school, they're not going to be out on the streets. And that also is not something that needs to be expensive. And I think that if we attend to those two things, we can change the situation that is actually keeping business away from Oakland and giving us this really bad reputation. You know, they tell us we're this great city, but there's always a but in the description. And it's simply morally not acceptable. It hasn't been for me all the years I've lived here. I've lived in North Oakland 31 years. And it's just not acceptable to have people dying in the street.
Well, my final thoughts really are that no matter what idea I have, and if I did have that magic wand to pull out of my bag, a city
Dan will
council
sell it to you.
exactly, a city council member is part of a legislative body, and to do anything you need to cobble together 5 people who agree with you. And so what I think that I will be able to do is to form that consensus and to bring the council together and work together in a way that we haven't seen in a very long time. That's something Oakland residents want very much. They're very much craving the kind of leadership we had under Jerry Brown, someone who's willing to put out a vision, a bold vision, a vision that points towards a better future, not one where we just limp by. I have demonstrated that kind of leadership in the past and able to bring together unlikely coalitions to solve very real problems. And so one other thing I want to touch on that we haven't touched on that is missing from this whole campaign is the exodus of children from Oakland. We've lost 15% of our children between 2000 and 2010. Families who have the economic mobility are leaving Oakland. We have to recognize the fact that our combination of high crime, high cost, and low public safety is toxic to families. They're not part of the public high cost in terms of our real estate taxes, and low public safety is toxic to families. And so if we don't commit to meet families halfway, the only families we're going to have left are the ones who can't afford to leave. And so that, for some reason, doesn't make it on the political agenda here in Oakland, but it should be, because there are a lot of families who are fighting to stay in Oakland, but don't have a very receptive ear in City Hall.
Yeah, I said earlier, I think at the beginning, I have over 30 years of policy experience. And I've worked in the state legislature, built coalitions, counting votes, worked with, even Republicans in some bills, worked with people who I agree with, legislators, staffers, agency officials. I've combed through major parts of the state budget. Obviously, I looked at the city budget, not too long ago, a number of times. So I have that kind of experience, I think, in working with people who are on a legislative body, kind of from the outside looking in, being the advocate, being the policy analyst, being the policy director. I also have an extensive good government background. I used to work for California Common Cause. So one of the things I want to do, and one of the reasons I've been been really kind of focusing on restoring trust and confidence in our local government is because if we want to do big things, people need to support and feel good about the local government. Right now, we're so far from that, it's embarrassing. And there are a number of things they want to do, whether it's improving customer service, having the rainy day fund, giving more authority to our public ethics commission, and having a city council that treats each other with respect in public. At a minimum, and we're just not doing the things we need to do. So I want to focus on those good government, restoring trust elements, which sound all processy and touchy-feely, but are actually really core and essential to being effective and being able to do things. So my policy experience, my desire to focus on good government, and my focus on crime prevention with addressing recidivism, I think speak to a lot of what the public are asking for.
Folks, I really want to thank you. I mean, this has been one of the better, more thoughtful, more respectful discussions of a group this size on an issue this complicated